Northwestern Reserve University School of Medicine in Cleveland, Ohio. This is the All Access Med School Admissions Podcast. I'm your host, Christian Essman, and if you're new to the show, then I want to say welcome. Thanks for coming along for the ride. I think you'll find this show to be really helpful in an application process that can seem daunting and somewhat a little bit intimidating. I'm here to help make this process feel more manageable and to give you the tips and advice that you can trust and accurate information that comes directly from people in authoritative positions that are doing med school admissions decisions every day. If you're a returning listener, well, hey, welcome back. And thank you, as always, for sharing some of your time with me. I had a lot of fun with today's episode and talking with my friend Cynthia Bonetti from Pitt Med. She provides a lot of information, insightful information about the curriculum, screening, and interview day process. At the end of our conversation, we wrap it up by taking some time to debunk 10 med school admissions and application myths that you're really going to want to hear, because I would bet you've heard some of them on campus or you heard about them online. So stay tuned for those. As this is the first episode of 2020, I want to share with you some of my goals for this year. I guess the first thing I want to tell you is that I plan to continue this podcast. Yay! I've said before that when I started this back in May of 2019, I really didn't know how it would all go. Maybe it would last a few episodes and then kind of fizzle out, but fortunately, and to my great surprise, the complete opposite has happened. It has exploded, and I have you, the listeners, to thank for that. So, goal number 1, keep doing the podcast. Goal number 2, get as many med school admissions reps on as possible. I already have some scheduled, and they include an osteopathic school that's coming up next and a med school in Canada, so we're going international. Also, keep sending me your suggestions. I've reached out to many of the schools that listeners have suggested, and some get back to me and they come on the show. Others, well, they haven't got back to me right away, but that said, late summer and fall are the absolute busiest time for admissions people. I get it. And then the holidays hit. So I'm going to circle back with some of these people and see if we can convince them to come on the show, because the listeners have spoken, right? Goal number 3, bring on some guests from some of the services applicants use in the application process, like financial aid and people from the MCAT and AMCAS. I think they would be really interesting guests with some insightful content. Goal number 4, bring on some current third year or fourth year, or maybe even some new residents from time to time, ideally from some of the schools that maybe we've already featured on the show. But I want to be careful about this, though, because there are other med school related podcasts out there that they do this type of interview pretty exclusively. So I don't want it to be too redundant. Goal number 5, continue to spread the word about this podcast. And this is where you come in to help me achieve this goal. Please tell your friends, your enemies, your pre-med clubs, your advisors about this resource. The more people this podcast can reach and help, the better. It's for the good of the pre-med land. So be sure to hit that subscribe button or follow button on whatever platform you're listening to this, so that you can always be up to date. If you're digging what you're hearing on this show, then, swipe all the way across to those 5 stars, leave a comment too, share the love. Okay. Quick calendar updates of some pre-med events coming in the first half of 2020. This one I've mentioned before. On Thursday, February 20th, from 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the AAMC Virtual Med School Fair is taking place, where you'll have the opportunity to browse and chat with, in the past it's been like nearly 100 medical schools through these virtual booths from the comfort of your dorm room or coffee shop or library. You get the idea. Wherever you get a good internet connection, you can tap into these med schools. I don't have the registration information yet for that, but I'm pretty sure it's coming soon. Here are a couple of other new ones to bring to your attention. If you live in the Chicago area, listen up. On Saturday, March 28th at the Sheraton Grand in downtown Chicago, the AAMC will be hosting a recruitment fair in conjunction with a big AAMC conference for those in admissions, financial aid, student affairs, registrars, the heavy hitters. These are the big players. That includes us. We'll all be there. The point is, a bunch of admissions people will be there. And this fair begins at 8:30 in the morning with some workshops and information sessions that are presented by the AAMC's pre-med services staff. And then it's followed by a med school fair from 10 to 12. The other recruitment fair opportunity is in association with the NAAHP, the National Association of Advisors for the Health Professions. This is a national meeting taking place in New Orleans. They will be hosting a student recruitment fair on Saturday, June 27th at the Hilton New Orleans Riverside. This is a big one, as a large number of med schools are usually represented there, in addition to a lot of other health profession schools, like I'm talking dental, public health, physician assistant, post-bac programs, other master's programs, among some others. This conference only takes place every other year, so it's usually a really high yield conference, and it usually has a really high attendance. So circle June 27th in New Orleans on your calendar if you want to get down there to check this out. I don't have registration information yet for the virtual fair or for this one in New Orleans, but when I get it, I will share it with you. You will find the registration information for the recruitment event in Chicago in the show notes. That's available now. So check that out in the show notes. It's in the details button in your little, wherever you're listening to podcasts right now. You can click on there and go to the link. Finally, if you have a question and you want to recommend a med school for a future episode, or you just want to say hi, you can hit me up at allaccess@case.edu. It's that simple. All right. You're here today, though, to hear all about the University of Pittsburgh School of Medicine. So let me tell you about my guest, Cynthia Bonetti, first. She joined the School of Medicine in 2007 as the Executive Director for Admissions and Financial Aid. Cynthia began her career in financial aid in 1996 as the Director of Financial Aid for the Pittsburgh Theological Seminary. In 1998, Cynthia's responsibilities at Pittsburgh Seminary expanded to include the role of admissions officer. Prior to her work in financial aid, Cynthia worked for the PNC Bank as a personal banking representative and a customer service representative within the retirement plans department. Cynthia earned her Master's of Business Administration degree from the Robert Morris University, concentrating in business management, and she graduated from Westminster College with a Bachelor of Arts degree in Business Administration with a concentration in finance and a minor in economics. Cynthia and her husband are Pittsburgh natives and have 2 teenage daughters, and we talk a little bit about that stuff and her personal life in my conversation with her. Now, let me give you a little bit of background on Pitt Med before we get everything going with Cynthia. The University of Pittsburgh School of Medicine is located in the Three River city of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Pittsburgh is located on the western region of the state of Pennsylvania. The School of Medicine was established in 1886 and shares the same campus with the undergraduate institution and the core University of Pittsburgh Medical Center Hospital, aka UPMC. You'll hear us mention UPMC a couple times during our conversation. That's what we're referring to. Pittsburgh is also home to 26 colleges and universities, including their close collaborator, Carnegie Mellon University. Oakland is the neighborhood in which the School of Medicine is located, which also includes the Carnegie Museum of Art, the Carnegie Museum of History, the Phipps Conservatory and Botanical Gardens. There are parks, there are shops, and dozens of great restaurants. The University of Pittsburgh School of Medicine excels in basic science research, clinical and translational research, curricular development, and clinical care, with more than 2,000 full-time faculty and a core group of master educators. The university, led by the School of Medicine, has consistently remained within the top 10 recipients of the National Institutes of Health funding since 1998, which really underscores its research stature. The school's global collaborations connect Pittsburgh with China, India, Italy, Kazakhstan, Colombia, and other nations. Its curriculum blends innovative teaching with staple techniques and supports specialized degree programs and in-depth studies. All medical students engage in a 4-year-long longitudinal research project, which provides laboratory-based, clinical, and other forms of fundamental research experience, which is something that we talk about in our conversation as well. Through UPMC, students complete clinical training at top-tier hospitals with diverse patient populations. The School of Medicine is a private institution and accepts applicants from Canada, international students, and applicants who have the DACA status. Additionally, there is not a state residency requirement. For the entering class of 2019, the medical school received 7,013 applications and interviewed 665 applicants for a class of 148. 51% of their entering class in 2019 were comprised of women, and 18% self-identified as underrepresented in medicine. Okay, are you ready? Enjoy. Well, Cynthia, thank you so much for coming on my podcast. I've been really excited to have you on here. So thanks very much for joining me today.
Oh, you're welcome. It's my pleasure. I appreciate the invitation to join you. It sounds like this is a wonderful resource for the prospective students and pre-health advisors.
Well, thank you. I couldn't do it if it weren't for people like you that are willing to come on and talk. So, and I've been kind of holding you guys off on the side until I'm like, okay, I got to ask Cynthia if you'll come on. And when you respond, I'm like, yes. So, so I'm really excited. So people don't know this, but we've been friends for a while. And
we have.
And so and we're in Cleveland and you're in Pittsburgh, and there's this, we're only about 2.5 hours away, 2 hours away.
Oh, we can make it to Cleveland in about an hour and 45 minutes. We're closer than we think. Yeah.
Yes. No, you've been here before, and I have family in Pittsburgh, and there are a lot of likes. So we're going to talk about Pittsburgh, the city itself, in a little bit. But I want to first talk about you. I've just read your bio to everybody, and you've been you started in financial aid in the financial realm. You had admissions added on several years ago. What have you enjoyed now since you've had that admissions piece added onto your responsibilities?
I just really enjoyed the witnessing of the students' stories and the students' journeys. And that's sort of where I transitioned from financial aid into admissions. I started a freestanding graduate school, and we were one people offices. So when, you needed help in another department, you just walked, across the hallway. And that's sort of how I came into admissions. And I just realized in working with admissions, you had an honor and you had a privilege of hearing people's stories and their journeys, and we'll see where their paths have traveled. And that's what I've really just enjoyed about the admissions component of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because the stories of some of these applicants is just incredible, and it's fun, and you learn a lot from some people. I mean, I learn something every day, usually in these interview days, from people. What do you do for fun in Pittsburgh? Because you've lived there all your life, or most of your life?
My husband and I are both natives of Pittsburgh, born and raised here. And it's just, we enjoy the city so much. We never set out to always being in Pittsburgh, but every professional and personal opportunity we've wanted, we've been able to find here. I have 2 teenage daughters, and we just enjoy, interacting with them and experiencing the city with them. We are a big sports family. I will have to say that. But it's not just the professional sports. We've been fascinated by Pitt's women's volleyball. They've had an incredible run in their season. Wow. So we were there, and both of my daughters, my oldest daughter, she plays varsity softball for the high school, and both of my daughters have played softball through the community league. So we've been involved with that. We come to Cleveland for sporting events. We come and see the Cavs up in Cleveland. And even when we travel, we go to sporting events. When we were out in Wyoming, we took the kids to the rodeo. So,
no way.
Yeah, we try to always sort of tag that on there. And, a summer day in Pittsburgh doesn't, we can't go an entire summer without, enjoying a game at PNC Park and
just
enjoying
ballpark.
The city. Yeah, we actually took my daughter and her friends, and they went kayaking on the rivers right in front of PNC Park this summer. And you really never experienced or see the city until you're kayaking on the rivers and, going around the point. So there's a lot of activities and just events. The Arts Festival in May is always a fun thing that we like to do, and enjoy the Arts Festival every May when they come into Pittsburgh, and just events along those lines. It's just a lot of different flavors, and you can, jump in your car and drive a half an hour and be at the lake, or go hiking in the mountains. So there's a lot of variety of activities that we can enjoy here in Pittsburgh.
You're totally plugged in. I meant to ask you, how did you wind up at Pitt Med?
That is a crazy story. So, everywhere they talk about 7 degrees of separation, I think in Pittsburgh we have about 3 degrees of separation. I was working at Pittsburgh Theological Seminary, and we have conferences with other schools and things along those lines. And a colleague of mine had taken a position from Harvard Divinity School to Harvard Medical School, and noticed that there was a position open at Pitt Med. And he emailed me and said, hey, I don't know where you're located at in regards to, where Pittsburgh Theological Seminary and the med school is, but maybe this is an opportunity you might be interested in. And reached out and found that it was just really a natural progression from what I did at the theological seminary to the medical school, and colleagues in higher education that I've worked with in other disciplines were already there and embedded. So that's really how I found my way to Pittsburgh Medical School.
Oh, I'm glad I asked. That's cool. One more thing I want to ask you, Cynthia, before we dive into everything Pitt Med. What's something that you find people are kind of surprised to learn about you?
That's funny. I've been thinking about that, and it's just when you've worked in an office, we've worked together in this office for 13 years. We've had very little, turnover, so we're fortunate. We kind of feel like, we've grown up together, we've experienced, we've raised our kids together. So it's like my life is kind of an open book in that regard. Although I have to say, if you would ask my husband that question, he just learned last night that I prefer white holiday lights on houses versus multicolor. And he said that would have been helpful to know 20 years ago when he started decorating our house. He's like, why does our house have multicolored lights on? I'm like, I
honey,
always told you that. But that's okay.
That's funny.
But no, I just have very open and just sort of, there's no sort of definitive line between, my life inside the office and outside the office. We're one big family at work, and, we learn and embrace about our families at home. So I can't really pinpoint one exact thing.
Well, that's great. Yeah. I've always found that about you too. You're very transparent and very friendly and approachable. So that's why I like hanging out with you. Okay. So let's talk about some of the aspects of Pitt Med. That's what we're here to do. So I like to start off with, let's talk about some curricular highlights, and kind of maybe let's talk about those first 2 years, the things that are in front of prospective applicants first. When you go out and meet prospective applicants, what are some of those things that you want them to take away about Pitt Med and how the first 2 years are structured?
Well, we have a block style curriculum, and anybody who researches us, that's the first thing they notice when they see online, that we have a block style curriculum. But what I think doesn't really transcend, whether it be in our written material or even on our website, how you can customize your core curriculum based on various programs we have here. So yes, you're going to start out with your basic science of medicine blocks, if you think about it as building your foundation. And then you're going to transition into your organ system blocks. And the incoming class collectively progress through those blocks exactly how they appear on our overview. So students have a general understanding by looking at that overview, how their curriculum is going to progress over the first 2 years. But what I don't think they really realize is how you can customize your curriculum based on areas of interest that you may have or additional experiences that you want. And those are completely optional programs that you can do to add to your curriculum.
What would be an example of that?
So we have several different ways you can customize your core curriculum. You can add an area of concentration onto your curriculum.
Okay.
There's 11 areas of concentration. They're always being added and evolving, but areas of concentration include, our newest one is addiction medicine. We have global health. We have public health, neuroscience. So you can add an area of concentration to your curriculum if you choose to do so. We can add mini electives to our curriculum. You can add as many or as few mini electives to the curriculum as you choose to do so. So if you want to research specialty areas early on, we have a mini elective in dermatology, surgery, emergency medicine. If you want to add on some medical languages, medical Spanish is offered through the mini elective programs. You can take the history of medicine. So you can add as few or as many mini electives to your first 2 years if you choose to do so. Now, some students elect not to. They have too much on their plate inside and outside the classroom. It's just another component that you can add to the curriculum. You can add a longitudinal patient experience to your curriculum if you choose to do so. The Department of Family Medicine coordinates and works with you and gets you paired with a moderately complex case and patient, and you follow that patient through your 4 years of medical education. So that's another way that you can gain additional experiences in that curriculum. We do have the longitudinal research project that you can do bench research, you can do clinical research, you can be the primary investigator of the research, you can establish that longitudinal research project based on your area of interest. And then even carrying it through into your third and fourth year, you have elective blocks within your third and fourth year that you can do 3 elective blocks abroad or outside the system if you choose to do so. So we have a standard curriculum and a core curriculum, but there's a lot of different flexibilities that you can
customize a lot of it, sounds like. Let me ask you a couple things.
Sure.
One, the area of concentration, that sounds like a lighter version of what a master's program might be. In a way, like how much extra time does that add on? Is it like a weekly seminar series, or how does that area of concentration coursework laid out?
So the areas of concentration start out very informal.
Okay.
You get additional mentoring from the advisor or the director of that area of concentration. There's lecture series and journal clubs that you participate in with those areas of concentration. Some students develop their longitudinal research project in support of that area of concentration.
Oh, that's cool.
Others do it in a separate direction. And then there are specific elective blocks in your third and fourth year that you would take in support of that area of concentration. So it really doesn't add a significant amount of time in regards to the classrooms. The lecture series and journal clubs are traditionally non-classroom hours over the lunch hour or early evening. But like I said, it doesn't add a significant time framing to your traditional 4 years, and it certainly doesn't extend those 4 years.
So you're getting that additional enrichment in that area of interest of yours, but it's not adding on a ton of extra work on top of the regular curriculum.
Correct. And it was actually came from, students' interests. Like the public health area of concentration is the perfect example of that. Yes, you can do a master's of public health and add an additional year onto your curriculum and have that additional academic credential, but not everybody wanted that. They wanted that in-depth knowledge, but didn't want to add that additional time on to their already 4 years.
When you said mini electives, how do you define that? Are these like 3 week long kind of like sprint electives, or are they 6 weeks long, or what does that mini elective mean?
Correct. It's a smaller portion of time. Some of them are over 3 week cycles. The medical Spanish is over like a 6 week cycle. Medical Spanish typically meets like Wednesday evenings. So it can vary per mini elective, but it's typically either a 3 week or 6 week experience.
Okay. And the last thing I wanted to ask you about, based on what you just told us, the longitudinal research piece, I thought that was unique. Does everybody have to do that, or is that one of those elective options too?
No, that is a curriculum requirement.
Okay, so
and I'm
everybody
glad
has
that
to
you
do this.
mentioned that.
Okay.
Yes. The other programs that I mentioned, they do not.
Okay.
The areas of concentration, the mini electives, the longitudinal patient experience, that is completely optional. But the longitudinal research project is a required curriculum component. Our goal is we want to graduate creative leaders in medicine, and we feel the longitudinal research project really fosters that creativity. And it is longitudinal in the fact that we start out very early on introducing our students to the research faculty, some evidence-based medicine and the fundamentals of research. And we actually have events where we rotate our students around to the research faculty so they get to know the research faculty.
Oh, that's cool.
Because the goal is by the end of their first year is to have a longitudinal research project mentor.
Okay.
So you use that whole first year of getting to know our research faculty, getting to understand the research is going on, and really do some self-reflection as far as where you want to do your research. And then once you get connected with your longitudinal scholarly project research, then you design the time frame of which you're going to work on that project. The other thing is the longitudinal research project is designed to be completed within the 4 years. So it doesn't add any additional time on to the curriculum. We do have research programs that has that additional year of research, but those are specialized research programs.
Okay. Is there any dedicated time to the research piece over the course of those 3.5, 4 years?
Yes, there is. There is time where the students are going to work very intensely on their longitudinal research project. Sometimes they'll use elective blocks to work on their longitudinal research project. And then there's going to be times where they're not going to touch their longitudinal research project at all.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. So the longitudinal research project, I have to think it's kind of like since it's a graduation requirement, you have to do it. It's got to be like a pass-fail thing. If you don't wind up getting great data, is that okay?
Well, correct. You submit a proposal to the Longitudinal Research Project Board. They approve your research. Then there's quarterly reports that you submit to keep you on track with that. It's not required to be a publication, although so many of them do turn into publications for our students.
I think so, yeah.
We have a Scholars Day here at the School of Medicine where the students present their research findings and present their posters. Some of them have presented at national meetings and things along those lines. But it's, in the simplest form, it's proposing a scientific question and answering it through scientific means.
Getting that experience of doing research and going through the process of setting that all up and having everybody's having their own project to work on. I think that's great.
Exactly.
Let me ask you about, Cynthia, about the first 2 years for the core curriculum that everybody is doing. What's that generally structured? Is it a mixture of lecture and small group, or is it something else? Is it all small group or is it all lecture?
So the major blocks are really divided in thirds. So a third of your time is in lecture, traditional lecture, whether you receive that lecture in the lecture hall or via podcast. And then a third of the time is in the small group discussion, team-based learning environment. And then the final third is an activity that supports that block, whether it be the lab of medical anatomy, whether it be a part of the community outreach, or working with the standardized patients.
Oh, cool. And are courses all day long? Are they just in the morning, only afternoons? Like, what's a typical day look like, basically in a block?
So that varies.
Okay.
Typically within the first 2 years, students are doing about 28 hours of scheduled time per week in the classroom. The format, it kind of differs. Typically, lectures are in the morning, and then the small groups will meet at various points of time in the afternoon. Sometimes, like a Friday afternoon, there's nothing really scheduled to be here on campus for the most part, although it does vary per block. So again, the in-classroom hours and the schedules are a little bit different per block, but generally speaking, what we tell the students is on a given week, you're going to have 28 hours of schedule instruction time within the classroom.
Okay, so it's pretty flexible. You're not in class all day long doing work and then having to study all night long to be ready for the next day.
Correct. And the curriculum is really designed, and I tell students they have to do some self-reflection on their learning styles and how they learn. And everybody learns kind of differently. And that's why you can receive the lecture, whether it be in person, interacting with the faculty, or via the podcast, or most of the medical students do both, depending on how they want to grasp the material and in regards to the small group and team-based environment.
I think I noticed online that the first 2 years, the grading systems, is it pass fail?
Satisfactory and unsatisfactory.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So how often are they exams at the end of the blocks? Or are there tests interspersed within a block?
Correct. Both.
Oh, okay.
You will have your end of your block exam, but also sometimes there's exams in between them. Again, it's based on the course directors and the specifics of that course. Yes, it is all satisfactory and unsatisfactory, but the students get continuous feedback on how they're performing in that block, how they're performing on that exam or that block exam, how they performed based on the cohort of their class and also of the cohort of the classes that have come, before them as well.
Oh, really? Huh. That's cool.
And that helps in regards to their board preparation, as far as really identifying areas that they need to focus in on and areas that they just want to, reaffirm and things along those lines when they begin to establish their, personalized study plan for their board preparation.
Yeah. So does Pitt Med provide board prep like programming, or is it everybody kind of does their own thing, but there's dedicated board study time?
So we have dedicated board study time, we have independent board study time, and even before that, we have preparations and studying for the exam. So all of the medical students will meet with study skills specialists in our Office of Medical Education to really establish their personal study plan. And they will work with that, and they will get them their practice exams and things along those lines. And then we do have a block at the end of our second year, the integrative case studies. It's about a 3-week period of time where it is very much dedicated in classroom time and preparation for the boards. And then that typically meets in the mornings, and the afternoons are free where the students can implement their personal study plans. And then we have about a 6-week period of out of classroom time where students really, can begin or to reemphasize, and hunker down and implement and continue on with their personal study plans and things along those lines.
People always ask, how much time do you have to study for boards? And 6 weeks seems to sound about like the time frame that most schools seem to have. And I think that's plenty, because it sounds like your students it's not like they're just studying at the beginning of that 6-week period. They're getting prep along the way.
Yeah. And like I said, you're exactly right. Yes, that is 6-week time, but you're not going to wait for that 6-week time to prepare for your board. You're going to not only just that integrative case studies block, but earlier on, like even in your second year, early on in your second year is when you're going to be working with the study skills specialist to get your personalized study plan. And really each individual block, the course directors are encouraged to use board style exam questions so that it gets you thinking in that capacity of how to answer those questions. It's not required; it's encouraged to the board, to the course directors.
Just to kind of start to give them a flavor for how step one questions are structured. That's great.
Yeah.
Any other highlights of the first 2 years you want to share with people that we didn't touch on? Other programming?
I think one of the things that we really emphasize is we kick off the curriculum with a course called Introduction to Being a Physician, and you have patient interactions really from that first week of your med school curriculum, and then it's, throughout your first year in regards to working with our clinical faculty and shadowing with their patients. And then in January of your first year, you really start seeing patients on a regular basis. Introduction of Being a Physician, we try to use that course to really set the tone of the curriculum to be very patient-focused, understanding of what your role is as a physician and also really what the physician's role within the community is as well. So that's another thing in regards to emphasizing in the first first 2 years actually, is really the patient interacting and keeping the curriculum very patient focused.
When they move on to the third year, then, is there anything unique about the third year that when you're talking with prospective students that you like them to know, or maybe some common questions you get about the third year curriculum?
Well, one thing we point out is you are continuously enrolled through the third and fourth year in regards to our curriculum, how it is based. So after you do that 6-week study period and you take your boards, you come back and you enter into your third year, and then you're continuously enrolled through your third and fourth year. Mm-hmm. The benefits of that continuous enrollment, it gives you more flexibility in regards to your elective blocks in the third and fourth year. It gives you more opportunities. Not everybody knows what specialty area they want to go into directly into their third year, so has an opportunity to still explore and determine what specialty area you have interest in. It also gives you more clinical experiences about 3 months prior than a traditional curriculum. So when you're applying for your residency programs from there. Mm-hmm.
And a common question that I think I say we as admissions people, we always get is, what about global health opportunities? Like, do Pitt Med students have opportunities to do things in other countries at some point along the way in their 4-year curriculum?
Oh, absolutely. We have an area of concentration that is specifically dedicated to global health and underserved populations. Students can do that. We have international electives. You can do up to 3 elective blocks abroad or outside of our system if you choose to do so. We're very fortunate. We have a lot of global outreach and connections, whether through the School of Medicine or the Medical Center. We have affiliations in China and France and Ghana, Honduras, Italy, Kazakhstan. I was there actually a few years ago. So there's a lot of different
pictures of that.
It's a great country.
That was crazy. Your pictures were amazing.
Yeah, so there's a lot of opportunities to engage in international experiences. We have the Dean's Summer Research Project or program that we have that they do, that you can participate in between your first and second year. You can take that, global as well. So there's a lot of different opportunities for international experience and global opportunities if you choose to do so.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. What else have we not touched on? Tell us so is the primary hospital partner UPMC?
Yes.
And
the primary hospital. Yes, they are. There is over 40,
explain to people the hugeness of UPMC.
So there is. So there's 40 community-based and specialty care hospital, as well as thousands of specialty outpatient facility. The core location of the healthcare system is very accessible to the School of Medicine. So if you would refer to the core center of UPMC, it would be in the Oakland area of Pittsburgh, which we reside, Shadyside, Lawrenceville, where the Children's Hospital is located. And there's really a lot of opportunities. We have the Hillman Cancer Center that's our students work with, McGee's Women's Hospital, Western Psychiatric Hospital that the students work with. And what's really nice about it is there's a lot of different opportunities in regards to amongst those 40 hospitals. You can pretty much gain experience in just about any specialty area you can possibly even, imagine in that regard. Geographically, they're all really relatively close. We can design your third and fourth year to rotate to the hospital that's completely accessible through public transportation, where you don't need to have your own private. Yeah, you don't necessarily have to. Students have elected to do that, but a lot of students don't, because it is very, centered in not only in just this neighborhood, but really even just in this region and in the Pittsburgh, vicinity area.
Tell us about Oakwood.
Oakland is a very Oakland is a very vibrant area. It's just full of energy and just full of, there's colleges and universities. So we have very young, vibrant community here in Oakland. It's where the hospital sits. So there's, a plethora of activity and faculty members. And it's just a very vibrant area to work in and to be a part of. And there's always something going on in Oakland. And everybody always says that, well, there's always something going on in Oakland. And there's always something going on with Oakland. And we're very accessible to other colleges and universities. We're very accessible to a short bus ride into downtown to access our arts and cultural districts. So there's a lot of, just uniqueness about the Oakland area.
Where do a lot of the medical students live when they come there? Do they live in the neighborhoods there? Do you guys have housing for them? How's that work?
Well, there's both. We have the Dare Street apartments. They are university-owned apartments that are reserved for our medical students. They are literally diagonal from the medical school. You can wake up in the morning, roll down the hill, and be in class in probably about 3 minutes flat. So it's very convenient for the medical students, particularly if you're not familiar with the areas and the neighborhoods. But a lot of the medical students do like to live off campus. Pittsburgh is a very affordable city. There's relatively low cost of living, so students have found maybe more affordable housing or more economical housing off campus, or maybe a larger apartment with more amenities for the same price as the Dare Street apartments. The general common theme as far as where the medical students live is they live in neighborhoods with a direct bus line to Oakland, so that they can have the opportunity, whether they want to commute in through personal transportation or, parking sometimes a premium, they can hop on the bus and they can be into Oakland within 15, 20 minutes. Biking is becoming increasingly more popular. There's a lot of bike lanes in the Oakland area, so students are choosing to bike into campus as well. So they're living in neighborhoods that are very easily, has easy access to the Oakland area.
That's great. So any other highlights about the curriculum that you wanted to make sure we got across to people? Did we kind of touch on everything? Or is there anything dangling out there that you didn't feel like we emphasized enough?
I think that's pretty much, the highlights of what I really want people to take away about our curriculum is when you're reviewing over the curriculum is you have an opportunity to sort of mold your curriculum or support your curriculum in the areas that either you're interested in upon coming here, or a lot of times students discover their interests while they are here and working through their curriculum.
Okay. Well, Cynthia, I think we've whet the appetite of somebody listening right now. So the main question is then, so what are you looking for? What are you looking for in the admissions process in a student to become a Pitt Med student? So let's kind of walk through the application process. So do you guys send your secondary out to everybody who submits a verified AMCAS application?
We do. We give everybody an opportunity. Once we receive their verified AMCAS application, we typically will send a supplemental application invitation within 28 to 24 hours, and all students are eligible to complete our secondary.
Well, I was looking at your secondary questions that I found on the internet. And can I ask you about one of them?
Sure.
One of them is, do they change from year to year, or do you, I know we all reserve the right to change our essays whenever we want to.
Yes and no.
Okay.
Sometimes we do at the request of the faculty on the committee.
Sure.
The committee, the admissions committee, determines what essays are to go on our supplemental application, and we do that at the end of every admission cycle for the next cycle. So the questions might change, but I think in the 12 years I've been here at the medical school, I think the questions are asked with the same intent in mind, or what they're looking for in that regard.
Might modify them a little bit.
Exactly.
So the one I wanted to ask you about is it says University of Pittsburgh School of Medicine is a culturally diverse and talented community. How would you enrich/enliven the UP SOM community? The essay should discuss material that is not included in the rest of your application. I guess my question is it okay if people refer to something that's in their application, or you don't want them to talk about anything else in their application at all?
No, they can make reference to it in their application because, AMCAS always limits your characters and things along those lines. What we don't want is just another reiteration of what we already read in an experience in that regard. So, there are students who do make reference to it, but it's really an open-ended question in regards to what makes you special or what makes you unique or what will you bring to enrich our community. And so many students can take that in so many different ways.
Right.
So yes, they might make reference to something else in their application, but maybe they'll dive into it a little bit deeper than maybe what the AMCAS application would allow, or maybe talk about a different component of it. Or maybe it's something completely different. Maybe it's their culinary skills, or maybe it's their, enjoyment or enrichment that they found through the arts or something along those lines that you traditionally may not see in those extracurricular activities. So you can take it in a different way. Sometimes students talk about their own personal backgrounds and talk about their sort of journey to medicine and what's brought them where they are today. So there's a lot of different ways you can take that. Sometimes I think students or applicants really overthink that question. It's basically asking you, why are you special, or what is special about you, and what can you bring that will, enlighten us here at the School of Medicine?
Yep. Okay. I'm glad I asked that because when I read that, I was thinking that because the applicants have to basically detail their entire life history in AMCAS. For those who haven't completed it yet, it's a beast. It is a beast. And so when I saw that, it's like, essay should discuss things that are not in the application. Like, there's got to be something that maybe you talked about in the AMCAS. Like, I really want to say that or expand on it a little more. So I'm glad you said that it's okay if you reference something and maybe expand on it in that part of the essay.
When we first added that essay, a lot of times we got cut and paste of something that was previously said. Ooh. And that sort of missed the intent of it. So that's why we kind of reference it, not to be like, you can't touch on these subjects. It's just, take it in a different direction, or maybe talk about it a little bit more than your application, permitted you to do under your, 15 extracurricular activities.
Yep. Okay, that's cool. And then the kind of nuts and bolts thing I wanted to ask is I noticed, and maybe you can clarify, that there's a minimum set of letters of recommendation that you asked for, and it's 3, but there's not a maximum. Did I miss something, or is there really not a maximum number of letters you will accept?
Truthfully, our system isn't designed to really cut you off. So, no, there is not a maximum amount of letters. But I want to caution students.
But that's a big but coming.
Well, right. What I always say in regards to the letters of recommendation is it adding value? Or is it bringing something more to the table? If you're going to give 21 letters of recommendation, that's basically going to reiterate the same thing. It's really not adding value. More doesn't get you extra credit. Right. What we're looking at in regards to content, the people who know you well, the people who can speak to your characters, at exactly what you said that doesn't come across on your AMCAS application. As you mentioned, we get so much information on your AMCAS application. So what are the letters of rec for? Well, we don't want them to reiterate your grades because we have that information. Or maybe they'll talk about what research you did. Well, you talked about that research, but talking about, your character, your work ethic, your ability to work in teams from people who really know you. Those are the letters of rec that add value. And we think that can be done in 3 letters of recommendation.
Oh, okay. That's good. It's good to hear. So if somebody submits 5 or 6, that's okay. But you just are looking to avoid the 9, 10, 11, 12,
or
13.
The redundancy of it. If you have a letter of a rec from the PI or the research mentor you work with, and that's the person who knows you well, that's fine. You don't have to provide a letter of rec from every research mentor that you worked with if you have multiple experiences and things along those lines.
I think applicants should keep in mind too, when you say that about the letters of rec, is these take a long time to read.
Exactly.
And if you're supplying 10 letters of rec, you don't want to, you don't want to annoy a screener. It's like, oh my gosh, you got to read through.
I don't necessarily know if it's annoy, but I think, again, it just sort of waters down the message that you're going to be across. Because if you think about it, we're looking at we're looking at your application, we're getting all that information, and then we're turning to the letters of rec. And by the time I get done reading your letters of rec, I don't want to have to read so many letters of recommendations that I forget about what you were writing about in your initial application. So you really don't want it to water down your application. You just want to have your letters of rec enhance it or support your application.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for saying it that way. Walk us through the screening process. What's that like? So everything gets submitted and they get the secondary back and all the letters of rec are in. What happens then? Everything's submitted and then we kind of sit back and wait. What's going on behind the scenes?
So what's going on behind the scenes is our admissions committee, which makes up 30 faculty and 18 students, the senior faculty member of the committee, the dean, and the administrators, we are part of the invite to interview committee. And what we are doing is we are sorting through those applications as they come through in regards to who gets extended an invitation to interview. And so then once we extend that invitation to interview to you, then the applicants have the ability to go ahead and schedule their own interviews. They have access to our interactive interview calendar so that they can pick the date that's most convenient for them, whether it be travel and things along those lines. So the summer is a very busy time for us because we start receiving those applications, as everybody knows, like around July 1st. And then we actually begin extending our invitations to interview midway through July. And I think that's really important for those who are sort of working through the process or understanding the timeline. So many students, so many times applicants will ask, well, when is your deadline? When is your deadline? When is your deadline? And yes, that's a very important question to ask. But another question that the students should be asking when they're researching their medical schools is, when do you start extending invitations to interview?
Bingo.
And that might be a very different than when our deadline is because if you think about it, our AMCAS deadline isn't until October 15th with our supplemental application due November 15th. Well, if we're extending invitations to interview already in July, even if you're a month ahead of the deadline, we're already in the thick of extending invitations to interview. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's so important for people. And I'm glad you reiterated that and reinforced that because we've been saying that, I think, on, just about, probably half of these episodes, just letting students know that you got to be aware of the timeline of how this works. It's a very confusing process for some people. And so don't wait to the deadline. We have to have a deadline because we got to stop accepting applications at some point. But
exactly,
it's in their best interest to get things in early because we're going to start. We have more interview spots in the summer than we do in October or November.
Well, I always quote that message was in a Hunger Game, may the odds be in your favor. You want to have your application being looked at when the most amount of opportunities to interview is available to you, right?
Yeah.
Use the laws of mathematics in your favor in that regard.
Yeah. What about, so we talked a little bit ago about the curriculum and all the different customizations students can do in it. What are some of the qualities that you think make for a successful Pitt medical student?
So Dr. Levine, who is the dean of the medical school, every year he comes to our admissions committee and he gives a charge to the committee. And basically what he's saying is, this is what we as a community want to look for in regards to our future students. And, he usually highlights like 6 points or 6 or 7 points. And yes, there is intelligence in regards to the your MCAT and your strong academics in that regard. Mm-hmm. But we're also looking for creativity, your hunger, your ambition, social skills, your curiosity, your hard work ethic, leaders. As I mentioned earlier, we want to graduate creative leaders in medicine. So we're really looking for those leadership qualities as well. There's not one recipe in regards to if you have this, this, and this, you will prove that you can do this, this, and that. And I think sometimes students look at that maybe in frustration, mm-hmm. that they want those check boxes. Yeah, and if I do all this, then it will equal to, an interview interview or equal to an acceptance. And it's not. And it is a very holistic approach. And I don't think truly the applicants really understand or embrace or even appreciate it in regards to we are looking at so many different dynamics of you as an applicant, as you as a class, and just trying to kind of pull it all together. But that's what we truly look for. When we open up an application, we'll say, what does this person bring to the table? And these are what we are looking for in regards to what we feel will be a good fit here for us at Pitt Med.
Okay, I'm glad I asked that. That's really cool insight too, to know that your dean comes to the admissions committee meeting and just kind of has this charge in front of the group. And I think that's
yes, and he gives the group an opportunity to ask questions, and faculty and students alike have asked that question. Well, how would you encourage us to identify leadership? So it's a very interactive sort of charge to the committee.
Oh, that's great. Couple quick questions about the screening process, or just things that you value. Do you require research? Since you have a longitudinal research experience in the curriculum, is having research experience required, or showing an interest in wanting to do it if I don't have research?
So it's not required. What we look for when we're looking at the application is, do you have a willingness to research?
Okay.
And that's regardless of what your career goals ultimately are, is do you have a willingness to research during your medical education? And you really have to demonstrate that in some capacity because, as you just mentioned, our longitudinal research project is embedded in our curriculum. It is a curriculum requirement. So you sort of have to demonstrate that willingness to research. Now, is it by a specific having an opportunity? Not necessarily. I mean, we have applicants who maybe because of a geographic location where they went to school, they haven't had a time to have that formal research experience, and they may use that third essay that we have in our supplemental application to talk about their interest in research or maybe what they would like to do in regards to their research. So it's really a demonstration or a willingness to research while they're in medical education that we're looking for.
I'm so glad you said that, Cynthia, because I was just going to ask you. So the third essay that you're referring to is there anything additional you would like to address that's not already covered in your application? So if I said I played varsity sport and it really limited my time and I had to work in the summertime, I just didn't have the right opportunity at the right time to do research, but I'm really excited to do research as a medical student, that's where you want to hear that.
Right. And also take that a step further in regards to not only am I excited to do the research, this is maybe the kind of experience I'm hoping to obtain while I'm in medical school, or this is what potentially, is interesting to me, or this is what I'd like to, learn more about at your school in regards to a particular set of research, things along those lines. But yes, it's a willingness to research during your medical school
great
education.
Tip. That's a good tip. How about gap years? That gap years have become, I think, more popular in the last few years. I think we're seeing an increase in trend of students taking time after they graduate before they apply. How do you feel about the gap years?
It's perfectly fine. And sometimes it's actually, makes you a more enriched, a more worldly, more well-rounded, and more specific, and you reaffirm that this is what you want to do with your life. And so our average age medical student here is 24 years old. We have students coming in at 20 to up to 39 in the last matriculating class. So those gap years are, you're doing something of value. It's perfectly acceptable. I don't even think it really, once upon a time, it might have made somebody have pause. Now it's just another piece of your journey. Yeah.
I'm glad you said that, because I think we're hearing, if people have been listening to other episodes, a common theme from other admissions people. And so we're just sticking with that theme that gap years are okay. And for those that it works well for them, and it can add value to somebody's experiences and future applications. So I'm glad Go ahead.
Yeah. If nothing else, even if it just reaffirms that this is what you want to do, that's good, because it is a very long journey. It's an expensive journey. This is not a job. This is a commitment to service, really, to your entire life. So if you need a couple years to say, this is what I want to do, then that's value too.
Yeah. Oh, I'm glad you said that. Okay. So we've gone through the application process, and Pitt says, we want to interview you. Come to Pittsburgh. What's the interview day experience like? How is the day structured? How many people am I going to meet with? That kind of stuff.
We interview 4 days a week, starting the end of August, and we conclude about the middle part of December. We just had our last interview day here this cycle.
Oh, really?
Last Friday. Yeah,
oh,
December
my. So you're
13th.
Done? You're done.
We are. We are done. We're done with the interviews.
Yeah, you're done with the interviews. Oh, my gosh. Wow.
And so you have an opportunity. You're going to be sitting there with, 11 other applicants as well. Our typical day, we do try to keep it around 12. It is an entire day experience. So we start about 8:30 in the morning. Our office opens at 8, so students can come in and get settled, and we have a little breakfast and people can get settled down. And we start off with a welcome, either through our associate or assistant dean of admissions. Sometimes I welcome the applicants, and then we go and we give the students a tour. The morning part of our interview day is an opportunity for them, the applicants, to get to know us, to get to know who we are, get to know our approach to medical education, to get to see our facilities, get to interact with the medical students. And then the afternoon kind of shifts and they do their interviews in the afternoon, and it sort of gives us an opportunity to get to know them. So we start out with a welcome. We do a very extensive tour here within the UPMC hospitals and the medical school, and we go down to our simulation center. And then we come back and we do an overview with the curriculum and student life, and talk about even about our admissions process. And that's either with myself or our assistant director of admissions. Then you have lunch with the medical students, and you have an opportunity to relax and enjoy your lunch. And then around noon is when you have your student interview. So you go and we connect you with your student interview, and then you come back to
What does the student have access to in the application? What all do they see?
So the student interview is completely blinded.
Okay. So there's no name.
They get their name and undergraduate institution probably about 5 minutes before their interview.
Oh, okay.
So the medical students, first and second year medical students, interview with us. And it really depends on what time of year, whether it be first or second years. And they all volunteer. It's completely a volunteer. It's not mandatory. And the students who volunteer to be student interviewers, we train them and let them know what we're looking for in an applicant and how to, interact with the applicant. Student interviews are about 30 minutes. And like I said, the students get out of class around 12 o'clock, and the students who are interviewing that day, we give them a list of the applicants who are interviewing with us that day and their undergraduate schools. And they sort of divide up amongst themselves who's going to interview which applicant.
Okay. And then the faculty interview, what do they have access to as far as the file goes? The
faculty has access to your personal statement, extracurricular activities, and that's just to foster conversation. They do not have access to your academics. They do not have access to your letters of recommendation. It's just your extracurricular activities and your personal statement to kind of help foster conversation and give them talking points. And the faculty usually get that information about a week before the interview with you.
Okay. Is the faculty interview at all structured, or do they have certain questions they have to ask, or is there just areas they need to touch on to assess?
No, it's not structured.
Okay.
Again, the faculty, they are all faculty volunteers who interview with us. They too go through a little bit of a training as far as what we're looking for and what competencies, we're looking to evaluate. But how they get at that evaluation is different amongst the faculty.
Yep.
We have an interactive sort of training session, like it might be helpful to ask this to, point to this particular competency or things along those lines. But it's really whichever way the faculty and students really how they want to take that. So in the training, we do give them examples on how they can foster that type of conversation, but we don't have specific questions that they have to ask.
And then how's the day wrap up?
So we're not even halfway through our day yet.
Oh my gosh. But wait, there's more.
Yes. It's a long day, but it's a good day. It's a very informative day. So then they do their interviews with their students, and then they come back and they do a team-based exercise.
Oh, that's right.
With us.
Okay.
And we do a team-based. You're in 3 groups of 4 if there's 12, and there's an observer there. And they're really situational cases. Because if you think about what we were talking about with our curriculum, a third of our curriculum is either in a small group discussion or a team-based learning environment. So we want to expose the students a little bit to that and also give us an opportunity to observe them in those types of settings as well. So they do the team-based exercise, then they go to their faculty interviews. And that's about a 30-minute time with the faculty. And then we do the small group session. And the small group session is completely different than the team-based exercise. The small group session is facilitated by one of our clinical faculty members, and it is very much in regards to team-based learning, as then they hand out a case, it's being discussed, they talk maybe about some points of conversations, hand out another part of the case to make it a little bit more in depth. And if it was really a team-based learning exercise, they would have you come up with some learning objectives, and they'll see if you have any learning objectives in addition to that case. So that's a really different experience. And what we do is we take the group and we divide it in half. So now you're in a group with 6 versus 4. And then after that, we have a session about student resources. So we talk about our advising system. We talk about financial aid. We talk about the new building that's our new addition that's going up, just resources from the student. And then we have our closing remarks. And so around 3:30, the day ends.
Okay. How about, I want to go back to the small group exercise. It's kind of the team-based learning piece. Is that an evaluated part too of the day?
Yes, they are both evaluated.
Okay.
And during that welcome, we kind of go over everything. And, we're not here to hide behind like the shroud of secrecy. We let the students know, how it's going to progress, who's going to be with you, the evaluated portions, of the day. But yes, they are formal evaluated portions of the day. The cases do not pull on vast clinical knowledge. I mean, we certainly understand everybody's coming from at different points in their career at different periods of time. So it's something that we feel anybody who is interested in medicine would be able to discuss and actively participate in.
I bet that creates that little extra stress, because that's just a different thing I've seen at other medical schools. What kind of recommendations do you have for students that are coming to interview at Pitt and they're worried about this team-based, these group exercises? What advice would you give people that are coming there?
Relax and enjoy yourself. Enjoy the experience. We receive over 7,100 applications. We typically invite around 700 to interview. So if you've been invited to interview, we already know you have what it takes to succeed here at Pitt Med. We really use our interview day to get an opportunity to get to know you as a person beyond your application. So many people who come and interview with us, it's their first time to Pittsburgh, gives them an opportunity to see who we are as a community, and they really should just relax and enjoy themselves. This is nothing that's going to be new to them. They've probably, by this point in their careers, they've all had small group discussions in their colleges and their universities, or sitting or even around a table and having conversations in regards to their friends and things along those lines. So, and there are some things like really you just can't control. We do not give the students who they're interviewing with prior to arrival. They get that when they come here. And that's not to put them at, to make them anxious or anything. That's really just more logistics. Yeah. But we want them to just relax and enjoy yourself. And that's exactly why we have the interviews at the latter part of the day, because we've had feedback say, oh, I'm not rather get them done early on and then I can enjoy the rest of the day. Well, what we want you to do is we want you to learn about us first, be able to relax, settle your nerves a little bit before you go into the interviews. And that would be my best advice in regards to when you come here and interview, obviously, we think you have what it takes to succeed here. So just let's have a conversation. Both of our interviews are very conversational in tone. Nobody's going to be testing or quizzing or putting anybody on the spot. The group activities, again, they're situational cases. You have observers and facilitators in there. It's not a multiple mini interview kind of scenario where you're going, from door to door. It's just a very sort of just natural progression through the day.
And be ready to contribute in that conversation, right?
Well, right. Absolutely.
Yeah,
right. Because in the small group discussion in a curriculum, you always want to add value to your group's discussion. So yes, you would want to, contribute in a way to, to add value or, to keep the conversation going in that regard.
I'm glad you mentioned the thing about that you don't give the applicants the name of their interviewer before they arrive, because it does come down to logistics and getting our interviews. Like you said, everybody volunteers to do this, and sometimes there's some changes at the last minute. And I remember years ago, we used to tell students before they came who they're going to interview with. And then if we had to change at the last minute, they'd freak out because they didn't have a chance to Google stalk them and know all their papers and all that stuff. It's like, they're here to meet you. You're not here to interview your faculty member. And I know you want to kind of know their background, but I think that comes out in the interview too, like kind of their faculty's background and things like that. So you'll get to know them.
Well, exactly. And we try to explain to them how they get the interviewer that they have. When they submit their supplemental application, there's a drop down where they list like 3 areas of interest or specialty areas.
Cool.
And the faculty member gets those same drop downs. And so when the students schedule their interview and the faculty go on to schedule their interview, the system is actually designed to kind of match you up with a faculty member of a common interest.
Oh, that's great insight.
It's great in theory.
Okay.
It works well in some days. I mean, some days it just works fantastic, and it is. Some days, I'll be honest, and I tell this to applicants then, it might fail miserably because, 6 out of the 12 of you might be interested in cardiology, and I only have 2 cardiologists interviewing.
Yeah,
and at that point in time, it is a random match. And I tell the students that. But like I said, throughout the day, we give the students instructions of what's happening next or an opportunity to ask questions and things along those lines. So if there is something that they are anxious about or they don't understand or they have questions about, speak up. That's why we, ask that. And I do the curriculum overview, and it's always a rough time when you say, does anybody have any questions? And it's a dead silence. And you're trying to get there in their minds. I'm like, well, I know they're probably thinking about this, so maybe we should talk about it.
Yeah. We've all, for those people, admissions people that do those talks, we've all been there where, any questions? And it's like crickets.
Exactly.
And you can feel the tension sometimes. And I think that's our job, Cynthia, sometimes is to kind of set the tone and try to get students to relax a little bit and so that they can be themselves. Because again, I know these days can cause some stress that this is high stakes stuff. To go then after the interview day, then you guys go to admissions committee. You have to think that then you pour over everything about the application and the interview feedback. Anything you'd like to mention about the admissions committee process?
It's very labor intensive. And the reason why I say that is not to say, look what we're doing, is to really reaffirm to the applicants is, yes, we are reading over your application. Yes, we are putting a lot of thought process into our decisions. And so it is a very laborious process, but they should find satisfaction in that. So after they leave, after their interview day, their interviewers are submitting their reports to us. It's all electronically through the database. Once they have all of the completed elements to their application, in other words, their interviewers turn in their reports, there's a summary of their application that the committee members do prior to even application going to committee. Once that's complete, then it goes to the admissions committee. And then that's when the admissions committee, like I said, that's made up of faculty and students, will then review over the application. And then when the dean of admissions presents the applicant at the committee, there's a discussion in regards to their application. And then those who are there, they rank the applicants. We do require a quorum before we even rank the applicants so that we have a majority of the committee members there. So it is a very time-intensive, thoughtful process. And I say that to the applicants as in, you should find satisfaction with that. Yes, people are reading your personal statement. Yes, we are reading your letters of recommendation. Yes, we want to see how the students' interview went with you, because our faculty and student interview have equal weight in the admissions process. So that's what's really going on after they leave in that regards.
How long does it, what's your turnaround time? How frequently do you put out acceptances after October 15th?
We release them all at once.
Oh, really?
It's January 31st.
Oh,
so,
really?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
And really, that's the thought process, again, to take off the pressure or the analyzing, well, am I better if I interview earlier or later, or that whole conversation. It's just come and spend the day with us, and we review over it, and then they have preliminary ranks and the ranks of the committee. And then at the end, after we've interviewed everyone, the committee votes on what our acceptance rank is, what our waitlisted rank is, and what our decline rank is at that point in time. And so we release that information, in January, no later than January 31st. If I tell them, we're not heartless admissions people. If we have that information earlier, we try to release it a little bit earlier, maybe a couple days, but normally that last week in January.
Yeah, before you press the button to send it all out. Oh, that's exciting. If somebody finds themselves to be on your alternate list or wait list, do you want to hear from them if they're dying and loving, if they're dying to come to Pitt Med and love the place? Do you want to get that information? If so,
yes,
how?
Our admissions committee welcomes that. And the best form is to send it electronically. If they want to email it to us, to our admissions mailbox, we do read over all of those emails that come in. We respond within 24 hours. We update if they have a letter of continued interest or additional information. We scan that into their application so that it's available when the committee reviews their application. So yes, and I think that's really important because some people, they submit their application. We receive them in early July. Maybe they interviewed with us in September. They got a waitlist decision in January, and now we're sitting at February or even March. And it's fantastic to hear from them that they are still interested in us and also what they're doing. I mean, they don't have to feel like they have to come up with something added to their application. I mean, certainly if there's something that they want the committee to know, we will receive that. But, just sending of yes, I have waitlisted. I'm still very interested in, your institution for, if there is a specific reason, we like to have that information. So yes, we welcome communications from waitlist applicants.
A sincere note goes a long way. Okay, that's cool. Well, I mean, Cynthia, you've been really thorough. This has been really good. Is there anything that we haven't talked about as far as your screening or application process that, you've really kind of covered everything I was just looking for. Is there anything we didn't talk about that you wanted to kind of express to people?
No, I think we did a fantastic job just, talking it through. And like I said, we're not here to have this level of, I don't know what's expected of me, or I don't know what they're looking for. By all means, if you have questions or if you have questions about our process, feel free to email us. We, like I said, we answer our emails within 24 hours. We have conversations on the phone. That is fine. I mean, our interview season's a little bit hectic as far as, out of the office. time. But certainly we have those conversations. And particularly if you've been interviewing with us, you shouldn't sit back, in your dorm or in your house and say, oh, I wonder what's going on. Mm-hmm. I mean, by all means, we are a resource for the applicants throughout the entire admissions process and their admissions journey.
Yeah, that's great. That's very approachable. Your office sounds to be very approachable people. And I know you guys, and I think that you are. So I'm glad for you to say that, because I want applicants to hear that it's not a black box, or it shouldn't be a black box.
And there's a very humanistic side to admissions. We're not sitting here doing computer sorts and making decisions based on, some, systematic processes in our system. There is a very humanistic approach to the admissions process. Mm-hmm.
So just to kind of switch gears a little bit, one thing we talked about when we first started was we started talking a little bit about Pittsburgh, and let's talk a little bit about Pittsburgh. You've grown up there, or you've lived there now, you're born and raised there. What are some of those myths you find that people have about Pittsburgh?
It's always fascinating to me when I meet someone who's visiting for the first time, and they'll say to me, Pittsburgh's so much more than a steel town. Or, I always just thought of Pittsburgh as a steel town. And if you think about it, it's been 30, almost 40 years since the decline of the steel industry. Yeah. And so, that image of the steel city, and they come here and they see this, vibrant community that's leaders in, healthcare and education and big technology and robotics and, biomedical research, and, see who we are as a community, and go down to our theater district, and they're kayaking on our rivers or biking our bike trails. And they'll say to us, like, it's so much more than a steel town. I'm like, yes, it is. But one thing I can honestly say that has always transcended to that time is, the dedication and the pride and the work ethic that we have as a community. We've just taken that and sort of directed that into thriving industries. So we're just so much more than that at this point in time.
Yeah, I've seen.
And if you haven't come to visit Pittsburgh, or it's been a long time, you have to come back and spend some time with us. It's
great. I mean, I like the bridges there are cool, and
the food. We've established ourselves as a very much of a foodie city. I think there was some. We were listed, I think, number one in food cities from some prominent magazine out in San Francisco, and they were indicating the stuff that we eat every day, and we're like, yeah, we enjoy that stuff too.
Yeah. And I know at PNC Park, the characters are pierogies.
We do. We have our pierogi race, and that's a highlight of our summer. Absolutely. So regardless of what the score is, there's always excitement in regards to our pierogi race. And that is a tradition here in Pittsburgh. So if you go with a group of people, everybody has to pick a pierogi and see who wins in regards to the pierogi race.
It's
yes,
like
absolutely.
Onion, potato, and cheese, maybe?
Sauerkraut, salt, jalapeno, Hannah.
That's all. I mean, because PNC Park is really cool. I love Pittsburgh. So, and I see a lot of parallels between Cleveland and Pittsburgh, and some of the same kind of comments when people come to visit here. Like, I didn't realize it was so, it's like, well, the manufacturing changed, and now much like Pittsburgh, we've had to reinvent ourselves around other strengths, like particularly healthcare. And you guys have done that too. So,
and the revitalization is continuously ongoing and reinvesting in our communities. Yeah. And I think that's what's really, significant is that, a lot of people, we did go through a decline where a lot of people left the city, but we're also in a position where, we are revitalized, we are investing in ourselves, and we are just, taking directions and leaps and bounds in the educational opportunities that are here. The opportunities for really, young people and people who want to settle into retirement. There's very much of a cross sector of generations here. And I think it's really
affordable
just
on a student budget, which is important.
It is.
Yep.
It is. It's very much so.
Well, okay. So Cynthia, we're debunking myths there about Pittsburgh, and you and I talked, we said, hey, let's not only debunk myths about Pittsburgh, but let's debunk a few myths that we think that exist in med school admissions. So can we do that now?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So I'm going to read the myths, and then you and I we're going to debunk them. So, okay. So here's myth number 1. You have to do research to get into medical school. Is that true?
Well, we talked a little bit about that, but I think one of the things you have to caveat is, these myths are different for all medical schools. I really think when the students are applying to medical schools and choosing the medical school they want, if they are applying to a medical school that is really research-focused school, while you may not have that research, you need to demonstrate to them or show to them that you have a willingness or an interest in that research. Like I said, regardless of your career goals. So that's really one of the things where you have to know the schools you're applying to.
I agree 100%. Absolutely. How about, okay, we usually get this question, I think, from younger pre-meds, maybe when they're first getting started out. Okay, the myth is you have to major in the sciences to get into med school, or if you don't major in the sciences, you'll stand out more. What do you think about that?
Well, I'm just going to tell you, our incoming class, it's almost a 50-50 split. So 55% of the class majors in sciences. The other half did not major in hard sciences. So again, I think it's, having that, what are you bringing to the table? And there's not a specific direct line. So I think you need to pick a major that you enjoy, that you are passionate about, that you will do well in. Yes, you have to get your core requirements in that all medical schools pretty much require. But I think there's advantages to either way. And it's just really, where are you going to, what major are you going to embrace, and what major are you going to do well in, and that interests you? Do you agree with that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think that, I think one, you're going to find the majority of medical students were science majors. It makes sense, right? The students who generally love science, ultimately, some of them go into medicine. But like you said, pick a major that you're really interested in, because quite frankly, that's what you're paying for when you go to college. Like, don't do it for us, do it for yourself. And if you do well in the core prerequisite courses, we're going to see that in the application itself, and you'll be able to demonstrate your ability in the sciences in the prerequisites that you'll have to do, whether you're a bio major or an econ major. But I don't think you should pick a major just to try and stand out, because that's, like you said, pick something you're passionate about, that you really want to learn about as a college student. Okay, so here's the other potential myth. Med school admissions only care about the science GPA. So there's, in the AMCAS, when we see it as admissions people, they break down the GPA into all sciences, biology, chemistry, physics, mathematics, all others, which are non-science courses, like humanities and foreign languages, and then cumulatively. So do we only care about the science GPA?
I can answer for us.
Okay.
We look at the entire academic picture and portfolio. So we are not just looking at that science GPA. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say my colleagues probably are the same in that regard.
I'm going to go on the same limb with you.
Good.
Yeah. I think we look
at it. It's an entire academic picture and an entire academic portfolio.
Okay. How about this one? If you get a C in a science course, then you have no shot of getting into medical school.
Again, nothing, it's not going to make them break you. I always get that call. I can always tell when organic chemistry down in lower campus has their final, because we'll always get that call, because that seems to be one of the struggling courses. And we, reaffirm, no, there's not one C that's going to make or break you, or one class that's going to make and break you. What we want you to do is make sure you have a knowledge base of that particular subject area, if it is in one of the, hard sciences and things like that. And, we're looking again at the entire academic portfolio. And we all know from our own education, there were classes that we really struggled with. And sometimes we learned more from those classes we struggled with about ourselves and how we study and how we learn. So a lot of times those classes you struggle with, you learn a lot about yourself that even, helps you out further down the road, or maybe even in medical school when you've hit that first bump in medical school. Yeah.
I would add, if you get a C, let's say you mentioned organic chemistry, then go and rock biochem.
Exactly.
Move on. And when you get to biochemistry, then blow it out of the water and make that OChem look just kind of like, okay, I struggled in it. It was a blip on my academic, record, but I crushed biochemistry.
Mm-hmm. And I don't even know if I'd even say it was a blip. It was something that happened. Mm-hmm. It was just one course, an entire academic study of 4 years. It's okay. What we're seeing is your long-term, your trajectory of your academics, things along those lines.
Mm-hmm. All right, here's another one. A high GPA will make up for a low MCAT score or vice versa.
See that when there's a disconnect between the GPAs and the MCAT score, whether it be one or the other, it always makes me pause, and it makes me really, look into it. If you have a really high MCAT score and a lower GPA, my question is it in regards to how they study? Is it in regards to how they absorb their curriculum over a long period of time, or did they just study for the test? So I think I probably pause more when I see a high MCAT and a lower GPA. And then if I see the reverse, where I have a very, very strong GPA and, I just have a lower MCAT, or, on the lower side of the competitive scale in regards to the MCAT, it's a test. It's just, there's sort of a threshold in regards to that you can meet the standards of that test. So, I think for me, and again, I'm only speaking for myself, I do a little bit more pause when I see a real high MCAT score and a lower GPA. And so I want to get to know a little bit more of, is there a reason for that?
Yeah, I totally agree. Like, you try to maybe go looking for some clues in the application, and you find out that you trying to connect some dots to go, okay, I can kind of see now why maybe their GPA was lower as an undergraduate student, because they were working a lot, or they were involved in some major activity, or the high school they're coming from maybe didn't prepare them for the college environment or the academic rigors that they experienced early on. Yes. Okay. How about admissions care more about a high GPA and MCAT than medically related experiences? So if I have a 4.0 and a 100 percentile MCAT and a very limited or very few or no medically related experiences, you care more about my GPA and MCAT?
That's an emphatic no. I mean, we're looking for medically related experiences. We want to know that you have tested your decision for medicine. You're able to interact with patients. You've been exposed to multiple areas in medicine. Maybe our jobs would be a lot easier if we could do a computer sort and this is who it is and that's how it is. But that's not, who we are. That is not our approach to medical education. And I don't think those are the types of, physicians we want to see as patients. So, and that's sometimes a very difficult conversation we have, because we'll get those phone calls from students who have, 4.0s and 525 MCATs, and maybe they didn't get an invitation to interview, and they'll ask us why. And, that's a difficult conversation to have when you have to say, well, you have to look at yourself, and how did you, come to this conclusion? Did you wake up one day and say you decided to go to medical school? Well, that's a little concerning to us. We want you to go out there and really test it and be involved in the clinical environment, have patient interactions and things along those lines. So, no, I'm going to go with that is 100% a myth that we want to see those medically related experiences.
Yep, I'm going to second that emotion. Okay, how about this one? You have to submit your secondary application within 2 weeks, or schools will think you aren't really interested in them.
So I'm going to go with a middle of a road type of thing with that. First of all, we don't want you to complete instantaneously and then find that it was not the best representation of yourself. So take your time, look at the essays, really understand what the medical schools are asking. Never submit your supplemental application at 3 o'clock in the morning. Nothing ever comes good of submitting a supplemental application at 3 o'clock in the morning. So take some time and make sure that you are submitting it and it is the best reflection of yourself and the best representation of yourself. And if it takes you several weeks to do so, that is fine. What I will also caution you on is sort of the reverse of that is, you submit your application to us, you get a supplemental application sent to you in July and August, and then you're completing, at the end of November, or November 15th is our deadline. You're submitting it on, November 14th. And a good application and a strong application is a strong application regardless. But again, you're sitting there, and at that point in time, the vast majority of our invitations to interview are out there. And so then you do, as an admissions reviewer, you'll sit there and you'll pause and be like, what have they been doing for the past 3 months? Or are they, truly interested in us, or are we sort of, an afterthought in that regard? So I think there is an optimal time. No, we don't want you to rush and complete it in 2 weeks if it's not the best reflection of yourself. But at the same aspect, if you're truly interested in us, waiting for midnight on our deadline's probably not the best. And certainly don't call and ask for an extension on that deadline when you've been sitting on that supplemental application.
Oh, it's totally great. We had a conversation about that just the other day with somebody that they got our secondary in beginning of July, and they just submitted at just like a day or two before the deadline in December for our secondary. And it makes us, you have to see it from the applicants have to see it from our perspective. If they're really qualified, like you said, what have you been doing for 4 months? And now are we like a backup program? Or you're not getting the love that you thought you might get. And now you're like, oh boy, well, I might as well try to see what else is out there. So I think applicants can try to see it from our perspective. But I also think too, I also get emails sometimes from students saying like, I know I just got the application 2 weeks ago and today's the 14th day. I haven't had a chance. I'm still working on some things. Is that okay? I'm like, that's fine. We have a recommendation to submit it within 2 weeks. It's just kind of a general guideline. It's not going to lock you out. Our system doesn't lock you out if you don't complete it within 14 days of receipt. But I think it's kind of, we try to give applicants some parameters to think about, to consider, versus saying, here's a secondary and the deadline's November 15th or December 1st. And at least to kind of say, hey, turn this around within a relative, reasonable time frame.
Well, and that's exactly correct. It's human nature, in regards to if it's not due today, we can do it tomorrow and things along those lines. But as a process way, because, once you submit your supplemental application, you're anxiously waiting for us to review it. So it's kind of also the opposite way. You have our supplemental applications and we're anxious for you to submit it so we can begin reviewing. But I really want to emphasize, with our system, and I don't know how your system is designed, but our system is once you submit your supplemental application, it is locked in. It moves you forward in the process. There is no reopening, re-editing, and things along those lines. So I emphasize to the students, if you need an extra week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks even to make sure that supplemental application is the best reflection of who you are, then take that time, because once it's submitted, it moves forward in our process. Okay. How about, here's another one kind of in the same vein. So your secondary is completed. If you get an invitation for an interview later in the cycle, then that must mean the school really isn't interested in you. That's a total myth, because first of all, it's a process on our side. And there are times, as you know, where we're in peak processing time and peak reviewing time. And there's times where our faculty are going on, conferences and they're out of the offices. And there is times where our process does get bottlenecked. I'm going to be honest with you in that regard. As I mentioned, we only interview around 700 students and we receive over 7,100 applications. If we are extending an invitation to interview to you, we are interested in you. We
Absolutely.
feel you have what it takes to succeed here, and we want to have a conversation with you. If it's a couple weeks later or it's a little bit later in the process, you are to read nothing into it.
Yep. I think because I know you probably see the same thing too. When we open up the secondaries, you get a little trickle in the first few days, and then all of a sudden it just, the doors burst open and you just get flooded with completed secondaries that you just feel like, oh my gosh, we're swimming in them. How will we ever get through these? So it is a processing issue and we struggle with, and I think a lot of med schools do, just the screening. It just takes a long time to go through this. So don't read into it. I loved how you said that. Just don't overanalyze it. Don't read into it. If you're getting an invite, we want to meet you.
You want us to take our time with it. You spend a lot of time submitting your application and telling us who you are. Give us that time because you want us to spend time on your application and review it. You don't want an instantaneous turnaround, whether it be one way or the other. You want that process to be thoughtful in that aspect. And boy, can it change overnight. There's days that I'll leave and I'll feel real happy walking to my car and it's like, wow, we really on top of it. We're going. And then we come in the next morning. It's like, how did that happen?
What happened?
It's a 12-hour period of time. Yeah. How did that happen?
Oh my gosh.
So it's a process. It's a process. So trust the process and don't overanalyze and read into it.
Okay. Last one, Cynthia. More experiences and research, like say international experiences and publications, will compensate for poor academics and or a poor MCAT score.
So, yeah, that's kind of hard. One thing, and, my children can even attest to this. I always tell them, your academic transcript stays with you for life. So what happens if you do have, poor academics and things like that for a variety of reasons, personal reasons, adjustment reasons, things along those lines, we look at your framework on an entire application, certainly. That's what the holistic approach is. And there is something to say in that journey. And as you're working in that journey, if you have poor undergraduate academics, the more, whether it be, experiences you have or, clinical experiences, research experiences, or even academic experiences that shows that, you have strength and you maybe distance yourself from that earlier on, poor academics, I think is of value to that in that regard. The MCAT scores, it's again, one of those things in regard you have the opportunity to retake it. We don't care if you take it multiple times and things along those lines. But I do think that students sometimes, get this thing is like, well, they'll maybe have a lesser competitive MCAT, but, if I go and do this, 3-year experience, it's going to overcompensate for this. Well, why didn't you retake the test?
Yep.
Or, why didn't you give that a try? And maybe economically you can't. And sometimes students explain to that or things along those lines. But, that is sort of, there's really no perfect response to that because everybody's journey is different. But I don't think one ends your journey. Like, I don't think that if you have a poor academic beginning, I don't think that ends your journey. There are people who have continued on that journey and have, wonderful careers in medicine, and same with the MCAT score and things along those lines. So I think it's just really a reflection of who you are and what you are willing to do and what you're able to do, and sort of showing that journey to medicine. I'd be interested in what your response is to that in regards to that as well.
I'm thinking of, I remember advising a young man one time, and he was unsuccessful in his first application. And so I ended up meeting with him, and he didn't get interviews or accepted anywhere. And he applied very broadly into the appropriate number of schools. And I said, I really think his GPA was a little lower and was below, say, an average of matriculating students nationally. I said, you might need to go and do some additional coursework, whether you choose if that's a master's program or you put something together yourself to show meds. I think that might be making them nervous because everything else seems okay. And And so he's like, okay. And so he left my advising appointment, and then he applied a year later, and we saw his application again, and he didn't take any additional coursework. He just basically put out the same application, but he went and did one of these. He went and did some like bunch of research, and then he contacted us again and said, why didn't I get an interview? I said, well, you didn't go do what I recommended you do. Like you need more, you need to show some academic redemption. He said, but I went and did all this research and I got these publications. I'm like, well, it's still going to make our admissions committee nervous that you're not going to be able to handle the rigor of our curriculum.
And that's what I don't think students really understand is we want our students to succeed. So what our question is, we're not going to set somebody up for failure. And we have a very rigorous academic program like all medical schools. Yeah. So while maybe that academic performance isn't a reflection of who you are now, maybe it was a maturity level issue, maybe it was an adjustment, but we still need some type of reaffirmation that yes, you can succeed and thrive, not just succeed or just pass. We want you to thrive in our curriculum. Our goal is from the first day until your match day. And so we want to make sure that you're able to do that. So you're exactly correct. And I tell that to reapplicants all the time, don't apply with the exact same application. If it wasn't successful for you in the first round, do some real hard self-reflection. And if you're very rich in experiences and in research, then, or in even medically related experiences, and as far as patient interactions, well then, you have to look on the academic side or the MCAT side and say, okay, well, am I demonstrating to the committees or demonstrating that I can not only embrace this curriculum and succeed in the curriculum, that I can thrive in this type of curriculum environment?
Yeah. Those are good ones. Cynthia, you've given us so much time today, and I'm so glad we went through these. That was really helpful. I hope people heard this and go back and listen to it again. Like, let it soak in a little bit, because what you just heard is, I would think, like you said, Cynthia, like, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say a lot of our friends at other med schools would agree. And I think we know enough people in the community that we would all kind of speak to these in a very similar way. So go back, and I think listeners should go back, listen to these myths again and kind of hear our responses. Just to kind of wrap things up, Cynthia, I want to know, do you have any recommendations for listeners, books that you enjoy, or medically or non-medically related, or other resources that you would like to point people to?
I'll tell you a resource that I use all the time, every day in some capacity, is the information that the AAMC puts out there, the Associations for American Medical Colleges, their websites, their publications. I think they're a fantastic resource. It's what admissions officers use as resources. It's what pre-health advisors use as resources in that regard. So I would encourage the students to take advantage of that organization's website. I know they put a lot of time and energy and resources in getting that information out to everyone. I would also encourage the students, so many of the medical schools nowadays have their own social media platforms. And so if you're trying to get to know about the medical schools and things like that, like, our Pitt Med students started the Pitt Medical Ambassador program, and they're on Instagram and Facebook, and they're interacting out there. Yeah. And, in an age of social media, and there's a lot of value to social media, and, there's a lot of good to it, but there's a lot of information out there that you really don't know what the sources are. And so what I would encourage students who are very active in this social media age is, go to those social media sites that are reliable. Like, if you want to know what a day in the life of a Pitt Med student is, go check out our Pitt Med ambassadors, Instagram account or Facebook, or we're not on Snapchat yet. We're not there that far, but we can interface with that. And you're interacting with true Pitt Med students who are going to be very honest with you. They do a cross variety of class years and traditional and non-traditional. So I would encourage, when you're going through that process and deciding where you want to apply, go to the medical schools and check out their social media sites and, interact with their students in that capacity, because it's reassurance that I'm getting correct information and it's coming from a very reliable source in that regard. So those are my two favorite things is, like I said, I'm always on the AAMC's website and utilize their resource materials. And I'm very excited about our Pitt Med Ambassador Program. And, our students are on social media anyway. And the fact, on top of all of their med school curriculum and all the things that they're doing, that they're willing to, post information about it, a day in a life, and they're even featuring some faculty and things along those lines. So
great.
Those are the two things that I would recommend.
Excellent advice, Cynthia. This has been fantastic. This has been fun. I enjoyed this. I love hanging out and talking with you about this stuff. And I just so you, like I said earlier, you've been really thorough and comprehensive in all your responses. So I think listeners are really going to walk away with a lot of insight, not only in the application process at Pitt Med, but also in general too. So thanks so much for coming on, Cynthia. I am very grateful.
You're very welcome, and I appreciate you inviting me to be a part of this. It's been a true pleasure. And for those of you who are out there listening, I wish you all the luck as you pursue your goal of becoming a physician. And just by you listening to Christian's podcast and the episodes that are out there already shows that you're on the right path.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Cynthia. Hey, I'll see you in Pittsburgh sometime.
Sounds great. Wonderful.
All right. See you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.